This is day 5 of the April 93 7-day retreat in Springwater. I didn't write down any questions because the whole matter of anger and its connected violence has come up in many different ways in group and individual meetings. So on a beautiful, warm, sunny spring day, with a few crocuses blooming, opening up their utter vulnerability, and birds singing, and planes overhead. Can we look together here in this bright room at anger? A few ways in which it has come up are the following. I have watched anger. Something annoyed me with the person I'm working next to here during the retreat. Got upset over the way he was doing things. There were no details given, but we all know annoyance with the person we're working with. But he said I could watch my thoughts about it. It was quite clear here in this atmosphere of quiet. We could even call it cultivated quiet. Suddenly, maybe after a few days of spending here, maybe not right at the beginning, but more and more with inner and outer quiet permeating this organism, it's possible that thoughts become more transparent, more visible and audible and feelable. Then he continued, what if this happens when I'm not that quiet? And I even had a feeling right then there's a deep reservoir of anger, maybe even violence within myself, which I've never tapped. But I'm afraid it may erupt sometime and I may even harm someone. Is it maybe dangerous to be too attentive or too sensitive, getting too deep with what's going on in ourselves? In other words, opening up the cement on top of the volcano. It was not his words, it's my describing it. And someone else in a group meeting asked, how can one, you talk about looking at anger, how can one look at anger? The person who had never been to a retreat before you. Very open, and also appreciating the openness he felt was here. He said, how can I look at anger? And what was said was, in the many hours we have here, the many rounds of sitting quietly, why not spend 1 or 2 rounds, whatever time it takes, to evoke something that has caused anger. When one remembers it, evoke the memory We once did it here, and of course, a memory is evoked all the time. But to do it consciously, attentively, alertly. Evoke a memory and see that is a memory, but look at what this memory evokes throughout the body and mind. Listen to how we formulate what is happening to us into a storyline, and how the words we use arouses more emotion, and how the emotion arouses more thoughts and words. See if you can play with it. Watch it in a safe setting of quietness. And it was amazing. The man came back to a meeting and said, it worked. I did it. He's here for the first time. You see, one doesn't have to have long experiences. One just needs to be a little bit open and experimental. It worked, he said. I thought of something that angered me recently, and I could literally feel the process of my guts tightening up, my jaws tightening, and my teeth grinding with the thoughts that were thought. But yet there was some awareness of this whole process. But it's true, he said, the more I thought about it, the more I verbalized it, the angles with which one comes at this thing. We can always find another exciting and annoying angle about this person. How can he do this? How stupid, or how mean. He's got it in for me. He always does this to me, not to others. He must have a pleasure in annoying me, or whatever all one comes up with. And he could tell that this kept the tightening gut tightening further, the teeth grinding, the jaw tense. But without making a very dramatic story, I'm probably making it more dramatic than he did. He said, in watching it and watching it and watching it, it subsided. The intestines, or the gut, loosened up, the jaw lost its tightness, the teeth weren't grinding, and the thing was gone. Of course, the next question was, will that operate the next time I meet this person? Or I'm in a situation at work, professionally, where something gets my goat. And, well, we have to see whether it can be observed. Of course it can be. There's nothing impossible. Somebody called this universe a universe of infinite possibilities. And that is a scientific statement too. Not just reveling in wishful thinking. Infinite possibilities for waking up, for discovering, and for change to happen with the discovery. The discovery is already a change, isn't it? To see something which for thousands of years has run darkly, automatically, unconsciously, to come into consciousness is a change. But what it is that is observed, what is observed, also changes under the impact of light or energy. By light, I don't mean some cosmic light or idea of light, but the light of seeing something. When it's dark, we don't see anything. But to see thought keeping the body in turmoil and the turmoiled body creating further thought, it sheds light on something that with most of us, a lot or most of the time, runs in darkness. But it runs nonetheless. And it does not abate without leaving traces if there has not been light. Light is just like on a photographic exposure. If there's too much light, you don't see anything but a white page. Light can delete what is seen, and the emotions that are felt can be dissolved, dissipated, so that the organism comes back to its natural rhythm, or resumes its natural rhythm of functioning intelligently. So what about anger? I don't want to dismiss it yet and say, well, you just watch it and it'll go away. We'll spend time to look at it here together. It is a common human problem or occurrence. May not even develop into much of a problem if it erupts and is finished, provided the eruption doesn't just mean one has killed somebody or hurt somebody deeply. But even hurting someone, if the anger ceases or dissolves, one may be able to make up for it. Go to the person and say, I'm sorry, what I said. Or one can open it up together. What excites us about each other, what triggers us off about each other, and not coming to the person who made us angry as what you did to me, but what do we do? And including oneself fully in this process of discussion or dialogue. Let's look at what goes on in ourselves. That triggers the anger. We can even talk about how we presume the anger started, and it's not so difficult to have assumptions about it, because we see it all around us in little children who grow up into anger. I remember when our grandson was very little. He was hardly born, and his mother wanted to give him a bath. I mean, he was a week or 2 weeks old, something like this. Well, she prepared a little plastic tub there on the counter and put him into it, and he screamed. He screamed and screamed. And they were both commenting how mad he was, how angry. Wife said to the husband, he takes after you. And I don't want to interfere too much, a sensitivity on part of a brand new mother, or the mother-in-law there. But I said, he's cold. He's cold. He doesn't like it. Who knows whether he's mad or not? He just lets know how uncomfortable he is or scared. We didn't keep him in there long. Took him out. It was not a mean thing. It was just our ideas and our cleanliness. What a good mother does to have a good baby. And then, of course, the irritation with the baby when the baby doesn't stop crying, or later on when he pulls the tablecloth off and everything shatters to the ground. So much anger triggered in adults over children. I got angry when our son spilled water. I couldn't believe it. What was this with water? Water is about the cleanest thing you can spill. And I had these intentions of not keeping him from playing on the counter, so my husband made a little footstool so he could play in the sink to his heart's content. But when water was all over the floor, or bathroom one time, I was almost panic-struck. I screamed out. So a horrible catastrophe had happened. I wondered, what did water mean to me? I couldn't bring up anything particular, but I knew it must have meant something, because it wasn't in the thing itself. And I realized that growing up with children, one touches all one's own buried angers, or fears, or being scolded. Maybe suppressing it, keeping it down under that cement. And now with one's own child, it all surfaces again. And sure enough, our son is very fussy with his children about spilling water. And it's totally beside the point to say, don't be so fussy, which is the tendency to do. What's so bad about water? Where you yourself programmed that the program, perpetuated the program, and it's being perpetuated now. So part of our anger is we don't know from where, from having absorbed it, imitated it, or suppressed it, at being thwarted, at what we wanted to do most, and wanted to do in an innocent way. Children do a lot of things to annoy their parents, to get back at them for hurt received, but a lot of it is very innocent, and there are many, many reports of people saying, I did not know why I was punished. It was so like being hit by lightning in an open field. But it leaves traces. It leaves traces which in human beings, maybe in animals too, results in revenge, in doing the same thing when the opportune moment comes to someone else. And that gives a strange satisfaction. Strange because it can never be satisfied, it has to be repeated. One could think, well, by having done this now to someone else, the reservoir is depleted. But it keeps going. All of our habits keep going. If not something else happens, which is shedding light on them, becoming aware of them, questioning them, whether one has to go on with them this instant. Not, okay, eventually I'll probably drop this habit, but wondering whether it can stop right now. It doesn't cost anything to wonder. And the more one is aware of what is going on, very often talking to oneself about the other person, trying to get worked up over something verbally. That doesn't have to continue. It can stop instantly. And with that, the steam goes out of the whole bubble, sort of collapses. But that may not be the way for different kinds of angers. People have told me that they have sat with anger in retreat after retreat after retreat. We used to hold retreat at a camp on a lake, and meetings were held in a little cabin which had a fireplace, which was kept going. And one woman told me every retreat, for she doesn't know how many, she kept going to that little cabin after sitting was over, put some logs on the fire to keep it going, and she says she burned with anger. Just let it all burn and burn and burn. Several people have told me this, not about this particular place, but just being with it, sitting with it. And in this mode of some attention there, some awareness, not knowing what would happen, just being with it, it can exhaust itself to a considerable degree. At least this is what I've been told. People saying, I realize I'm not angry the way I used to be. Things don't turn me into anger as they used to. I can see much more what's going on and don't get all worked up over it. So one has one's own past of having been treated angrily. Angry words, angry deeds, angry hits. The remembrance of that. Or one has seen other people be treated with anger. One has had anger oneself, maybe not able to express it. Many parents get very upset when their children express anger, have tantrums. And people around one will sort of exert pressure on oneself as a parent. Sort of like, are you letting him get by with this tantrum? Maybe it's changed today, but there was tremendous pressure in my childhood and bringing up a child to not let kids get away with that they have to learn to control their anger. Because what if you go out into society, which is this mild, angerless entity? There's all the anger we pick up through the electronic media. It is staggering. Of course, the news that come to us, but the movies and the videos, I find it absolutely staggering. It seems to be almost all violence. And in ever more clever, intriguing ways put together by the producer. More speedy, so you're exposed to more violence. And people who are used to watching it don't feel it very much. It's if one is an old timer not used to this, then it hits you, what this does to the organism. I know our grandchildren, when we arrived at Christmas, they had asked for renting a certain movie. Seemed too much, flying out there and being with the kids, and it was so nice being with them, but then they wanted us to see this movie, and the parents too. And even though Kyle and I are maybe more than polite guests, we just couldn't take it after a while. It was so speedy, so explosive, it was a kid's movie. And it didn't bother them at all. They've watched the new Batman and the new this and that. Unbelievable. And then in the room, which they had prepared very nicely for us, there was, the guest room, a big poster of the Exterminator. I found it scary. Horrible. You know that poster? Have you seen it? Sort of part human, part something or other. Who dreams this stuff up? And then we affect ourselves with it, and then we become like that. I mentioned it sort of slightly humorously to Ralph, and he took it down. He's getting to be very sensitive about many things. It's a wonderful thing to see. Our relationship has changed completely. There's a real friendship. Even though realizing he's grown up in a different time with different influences of all kinds of stuff. Fortunately, one reads that the movie makers have found out that nicer family movies bring greater box office return. So then they're going to be produced more less violent movies. And we were talking about it this morning in a meeting, all the events that are going on in this world that are almost too horrid to put into words. Does this leave sort of like a global dust layer, like a volcano erupting, hiding the sun? Does it leave a cloud of darkness covering the globe? I don't want to put ideas into our heads, because if we believe it, we feel sick. But putting it less poetically or dramatically, are we all participating in this? Whether we want to or not, because it's there in the air. Violence, callousness, indifference, pain and hurt, revenge, and the pleasure of violence. I don't know whether you saw one of a 60-minute fragment where the interviewer was with a Serbian general who I've never once heard mentioned in the news. We listen to the news quite regularly when I'm home. I forget his name now. And the interviewer was, of course, asking him. It was a very, very callous man, convinced in the need for power, of ethnic cleansing, driving people out. And then the camera was taken to places where he was talking to people gathered around him. And an incredible power of whipping up the emotions of the people who were listening to him, and had the feeling no matter what they felt before they heard the talk, they felt differently afterwards. Maybe not everyone, but it was so powerful, very reminiscent, of course, what I went through in Germany, with all the speeches that were made to whip up the anger of a whole country against the enemy, whoever the enemy was. One enemy remained solid throughout, but then there were all these different enemies. And it made it so clear again, so immediate, the power of being whipped into agitation and anger by the eloquence of someone else who knows how to use words and how to appeal to our wounded sides. Those wounds that thirst for revenge or for power, feeling underlings. All of this can be so cleverly exploited. The man had such capacity to feel what needed to be said to get people aroused to do more fighting, never to give in, never to sign an agreement. So, are we exploitable that way? It may not be that we would be even in touch with a person like this here or where we live, but when we get together, do we rally together against somebody, a sort of a common enemy, somebody in our work group? We do that, don't we? not to that extreme degree, but we love being together, excited over somebody else's wrongdoing, or stupidity, or weakness, or incapacity. Or meanness, whatever. To keep focusing on it. And we love to get whipped up and express our anger together. Or our indignation, or whatever. We love to have allies in our angry feelings, our vindictive feelings. Love to find somebody who shares it, or who we can make to share it with us. Two are better than one, to share a vindictive feeling against someone else. Can we watch that when it is happening, when we're in the midst of it, or when it is about to happen? Which does not mean one cannot discuss what is going on, but what is the language we're using and what is our motive? Are we really trying to look at facts and put it into accurate terms, alone or together? Or do we or subconsciously delight in inflammatory language, which then gets us all worked up, alone or together? Can we watch what language we use in thinking and talking about each other, or ourselves for that matter? Can be just as incendiary about ourselves. Somebody mentioned that to me, having had some period of really clarity and openness, seeing, hearing. And then later on, when the mood had shifted into negativity, to think, oh, I was just proud then. I was just proud about this whole thing. So even maligning something in memory, which may not have had any trace of pride, because there cannot be openness and clarity of hearing and seeing when the thought, feeling of pride is in operation, and it is not open. But it can come afterwards. Wow, I was really terrific. And there's nothing wrong with it. It happens. We were praised for every little thing we did in most homes, not in every home. So the program is now introjected, as it were. And we praise ourselves for being good and put ourselves down for being bad, just like our parents and brothers, sisters, teachers, religious leaders did. So can we listen to that too? Listen what we do to ourselves and to each other without judging it, without punishing ourselves for what is observed to be just so. We love to put others down to feel a little bit of something about ourselves, and we like to put ourselves down out of habit of punishing. Maybe this is some kind of atonement to put ourselves down. Atonement for what? Actually, atonement means at one-ment, and our habitual atonement does not bring that about. So living in the midst of our own angry memory traces, in the midst of what is happening globally, and our propensity to get excited and agitated through language or pictures, concepts. What are we going to do? Here we are, fragile, vulnerable human beings, and maybe afraid of opening up like these crocuses out there. The petals are so fragile, too much sun and they'll collapse, but so they do. We're afraid of opening up, of being vulnerable. What's going to happen to me? Opening up to what's there, inside and out, and not painting pictures about it that then we have to react to, but being in direct contact, not worrying about deeper layers of violence which may erupt into hurtful crime or whatever, but touching violent thoughts and feelings as they are there, if they come to be exposed through openness. Maybe if there's real openness, there's nothing there, because the energy doesn't even travel in all of those circuits of past memories and excitabilities. That whole network can lie there without energy, if energy is here in open vulnerability. One person said, yes, but there may be a little rodent running through the field. And the birds which we admire, so beautiful on their wing and their calls, may be spelling misery for that little mouse. It's true. That's how it happens. The bird itself may be prey when the season is open for hunting. But birds don't excite and incite each other through language and remembered incidents and symbols. They just do what they need to do to survive, and they die for the survival of some other, and it's finished. It doesn't get recorded in books and plays and television. So there can be always a fresh flying, a fresh running, not of the particular mouse that was swallowed. That's finished. We carry the heaviest of burdens, I'm sure, of all the creatures on this earth. No other creature carries this immense burden of a unfathomably highly developed brain and organism. The sensitivity of the organism and the capacity of the brain to remember. And to excite this organism from memory as though it was something that was actually happening can date back 1,000 years. But the brain can still whip up the people about the injustice suffered 1,000 years ago and call for vengeance and imagine and build the weapons. And the art of war. I just read an interesting item in. Someone loaned me the first copy of Tricycle. You may be familiar with it. It's a very fine, high standard Buddhist publication. And in there I saw a little item that Shambhala, the publishers of mostly spiritual books, sold 10,000 copies of The Art of War to the Marines. It's a Chinese old book, maybe the year 1000, and some Marine commandant and some other military people have made it required reading. Good for Shambhala. 1,000 tapes of that book, that's what it was. But the book itself is required reading in many units. I don't exactly recall all the detail of it. Well, maybe if it is going back to the war of the year 1000, we will all gain from it. But I don't know whether that is what's going to happen. The invention of weapons and systems will continue. Because the brain also loves to invent, to figure out new things, put things together in a new way. And a lot of inventions, maybe most inventions, which were not necessarily invented to make war more ingenious and effective, have been used in that way. So we're living in the midst of that. How are we living in the midst of it? Our own burden, the burden of this brain, which is not my brain. I didn't grow it. It grew according to ancient, unfathomably ancient information programs, to this unprecedented capacity to invent, to remember, and to confuse what is thought and imagined with what is real. That the brain by itself cannot bring off to see the difference. It takes something else, which we call insight. To see what is thought, rattling around, inciting the organism to action, to violence, or to submission, whatever. That can be seen. That's the amazing thing. It's absolutely miraculous. Because if that could not be seen, we would all be doomed. But there can be insight into angry words and the intelligence that goes with insight stopping to talk in that manner, letting go of it. This is not suppression, this is intelligent seeing. This leads to that, and why that? We have enough of it, we don't need it. And also preserving the state of openness, which one can see narrowing down when the story starts running, with the angry story, with the angry content. Seeing that feeds into that intelligence. Or the intelligence makes it visible, exposes the narrowing down into tight, irritated, irritable quarters when stories start running. Dark. So, seeing it running, why continue with it? You could say, and this is of course brought up a lot, and I know it myself, sometimes there's such momentum to our habits. They seem unstoppable. But I would never subscribe to any conclusion of that kind. If any assumption, then assume that they are stoppable, not that they are unstoppable. Because the energy or power of insight with its intelligence and love and compassion is stronger than all habits. And it doesn't function in habitual, brain-limited ways. It's unfathomable. There, just quickly, two pieces of writing that come to mind right now, which you may be familiar with or not. One is a play by Gogol, the Russian writer. It's called The Lower Depths. We recently saw a a Japanese adaptation of it on television, but it did not at all do justice to just the bare play. It takes place sort of in a dungeon-like basement where all kinds of derelicts and outcasts are eking out an existence. And this man arrives who just talks to everyone. And he seems to have unlimited love, not soupy kind of stuff. Just listening to people, giving some advice here and there, some encouragement, but being able to be with everyone totally without judgment. At least that's how I remember it. And the other is what I read a few times long ago by Jacques Lucéron, a remembrance of someone in a concentration camp, Buchenwald, just spreading light, the light of understanding, how we create our own Buchenwalds, our own concentration camp. But it wasn't messagey, it was just someone being there with the whole thing in the midst of utter misery, darkness, horror, crime. And maybe not, making a little bit of difference. I don't know. We will end here for today.